in this kind of mixed emotions that we have gone through, we have passed it down to our little ones around us. I'm not talking about the parents, the teachers only, but the parents, the teachers, the school authorities, and everybody. We have definitely passed it down to the little ones who are of that age where they receive anything and everything from us. Then how do we give them our best efforts to blossom is a matter of concern for all of us, as neither the school nor just the teachers or only the parents could have handled and have understood how to handle without each other's presence. That is something we should realize and we should feel, because many times so many things have crossed our minds, I know, but it has been all of us, the school, the teachers, and the parents, that has made us understand that we need to be adaptable in all situations and help these children with this spirit that we can be adaptable to any situation, to be followed by them in life. And that will be the best education that we should give at this time, because we really probably got an opportunity to do it, I would say. And if we don't get into not just passing down knowledge, which would have otherwise remained like that hadn't this kind of situation happened. So if we can prevent ourselves from feeling and taking it on us that passing down the knowledge is all that the school, the teachers, and the parents should do with the children, and we can help in the development of the personality of the child instead, which we are trying to express by saying that we can be adaptable to any situation, then we would be really preparing a nation to face all odds, because the nation, or to a larger extent the world, will be going ahead with these children whom we are dealing with today. And I would like to call this development an artistic development, which we have been completely ignoring in our age-old understanding of only taking up the task of passing down the knowledge. Let our best efforts in all these 4 sessions help us to understand that what I can do by building this kind of a school, what all the teachers could do in terms of transferring this belief among the parents and the students, and how could the parents convert this belief into actions in helping the child or the children whom they have to raise in building the nation or the world. Let's now focus on Sunitha ma'am's talks on these and your thoughts, which she is going to elaborate. But before that, I would request Kirti Divedi to welcome Sunitha ma'am formally. And after that, the stage is all.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. So about Ms. Sunitha Subramaniam, she has been our mentor since 2018, from 2019. She has been trained in the Montessori method in India, and she has been a teacher trainer and a teacher in the Montessori environment for the last 30 years in India and outside India. A warm welcome to Ms. Sunitha Subramaniam to listen to what she has to offer. Thank you, ma'am. Please come. It's all yours now.
Thank you, Kirti. Thank you, Srila, and I thank all of you parents who have uh, taken this time to join the session. I'm um, I'm most grateful that I have this opportunity to meet more parents and share with all of you something that is quite a passion for me, that is helping in the development of children. Uh, Before I start the session, I would like uh, you all to take a brief moment to think of what you wish for your child at this moment in time, and maybe you would like to share it with us. What is it that you truly wish for your child at this moment in time? Would anybody like to share with all of us? Any parent?
Hi, ma'am. This is Sriram. Sorry. So it's a bit of a sudden question, so I'm still collecting my thoughts.
Yeah.
So at this moment, for my daughter who's sitting right here, Nivedita, I think I would like her to be moving towards making her please, own decisions, if I may say so, and being responsible for her decisions. I mean, given her age, I don't expect her to be making a lot of decisions at this point. But I think if I think about it, I'm sort of looking back at my own childhood, where most of the decisions were not really made by me, but made by my parents. I had an elder brother as well, so I was just following most of the times. So I would like to see that aspect in her, and yeah, that's what I can think of right now.
Can
Hi,
I
ma'am.
put it in this way, that you would like her to be independent as much as is possible for at this moment in time?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
I think that's yeah.
Yes, Moshmi.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is a very difficult question right now for me or too, because right now you can see that my son is sleeping. He's 3 years old, and so yeah, being a mother, I think I want my baby to be independent, to be a good human being. Yeah, I can say that only.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Anybody else?
Ma'am, my name is Dikshita and I'm Idea's mom. Unfortunately, my bandwidth is low, so I wouldn't be able to turn on my video. What I wish for my child is that whatever she wishes to pursue in future, she should have the what do you say? She should be able to do it without any restriction in her mind. She should be able to believe that she can do anything that she wishes to do with all her might and mind.
Yes.
So I don't want her to see hurdles as real things as barriers. I want her to see hurdles as something that is going to uh, push her forward. So I want that kind of a mindset for my daughter. No matter what she wishes to pursue, I think yeah,
Okay.
that's what I want.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to
Uh,
share?
Hello, ma'am. This is
Yes.
Ganesh, Bhaumik's father.
Yes.
So, what I wanted for my child to be like to develop a kind of passion. See, he is now, 10 years old, and I think it's very early for him to decide where he wanted to go. It's a time that they can't develop kind of a passion at this point of time. whether it's learning, whether it's sports, whether it's studies, or whether it's some music or something like that. So I want him to be sure that, to try and develop kind of a passion on the area where he is actually trying to pursue. So that's what I am looking forward for him to be at. So
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Maybe just take 1 or 2 minutes and then we can go from there.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Manasi. I'm David's mother.
Yes.
I have met you the last time you came.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I really want him to be curious, that he's satisfying for most of the part, but also not to settle down and really be passionate and explore things of on his own, and you know. Find out things that will that will be really satisfying to him to understand things. So be curious and then to explore on his own.
Oh, that's nice. Anybody else, or shall I carry on from here? Is anybody wishing to chair?
You can carry on, ma'am.
Okay. So one of the things that I know all of you said, it's like a little bit of a sudden idea, but then I really wanted that suddenness, because sometimes we think, when we have too much time to think, then we think of all of different possibilities. I wanted you to come, and as you said, it is as I think it was Shruti's father who said that he would like her to be independent, uh, make choices for their own. But it's not about the things you do, but it's about saying that, and that's what the Montessori method is about. And I'm found it is one of the, through my experience over the last 30 years, it's one of the things that I found it's looking at, which is looking at the total development of the child. And one of the principles of the underlying principles of this method is to help and aid the development of a child, where the education that we impart to the child helps aid the child to grow up to be an individual, an adult, who is adapted to his or her time and space. And when we take these words, adapted to one's time and space, what does it actually mean? The word adapted very often gets confused with the word adjustment. Adjustment doesn't imply comfort. Whereas the term adaptation or adapting to something means that you can find comfort, you can find joy, you can find happiness in the situation that you are in. So when we are saying that a person is happy or adapted to one's situation, it means that the person is happy and comfortable in the situation. And only when someone is happy and comfortable in a particular situation will they be free, in a sense, to participate in whatever circumstances are there. So the ideal of this form of this method of education is to help the development of an individual so that they may grow up to be adapted to their time and space. And when we say time and space, it means the times that they are living in and the space that they are living in, wherever it may be. It may be India, it may be in the south of India, it may be the north of India. And now with the fact that we are having to traverse space through this medium of this electronic medium, it's now almost anywhere in the world. And the other thing about the method, it is about helping the child be independent at every stage in their life. I think he mentioned, father mentioned that, as much as she can make the choices and decisions as she is now. But that's true. At every stage, we are making choices. every second of every day, everybody is making choices. Whether consciously or unconsciously, we are making choices. And this happens even to young children. And some choices can get dominated by someone's personal choice, can get dominated by an external force. We as parents have to be aware that for the very young children, yes, we do make choices. We make choices for the children where they are unable to make the choices, where they haven't uh, either the experience nor the knowledge to make certain choices. Now, for a 3-year-old, I think Mashmi mentioned that her child is 3 years old. Now, she cannot expect her child to choose the school that the child will enter. That's the decision the parents will take. And the parents, yes, all of us parents want the best for our child. Okay, and we to the degree that we can, in whatever way that we are able to, we will do the best that we can in a given situation. So when it comes to choosing schools, there may be many criteria that we have to adhere to before we choose a school for our children. And of course, we would look at the best options that we have at a particularly given time. But when we are now that why I'm going so much into this kind of making choices is about the fact that we have to learn to make choices, and we have to be conscious of our choices. Only then we will be able to uh, allow this to happen for our children too. And that's the reason why I'm spending so much of time talking about the ability to make choice and the way in which we make our choices, and about independence. The very crux of the idea that independence is one of the core things core ideas which we help or develop in the Montessori classroom is the fact that children, I mean, as human beings, when we are ready to be born, there are certain steps we take which show us that we would like to be independent. Okay, when we are as children in the womb, as a baby in the womb, we are totally dependent. As a fetus, we're totally dependent on in the prepared environment, which is providing all the needs uh, that are required for our development inside the womb. Okay? But once we are born, that's the first step that each human child, or in fact, any creature that is born, makes towards independence. Because you're leaving a prepared and carefully prepared environment, which has totally looked after your needs, and you didn't really have to do anything other than develop yourself. So the minute a human child is born, that's the first step towards independence, because now the child has to breathe by themselves. The child has to, in a sense, feed themselves too. Although they are being nursed, the act of taking in the food is done by the child. And that is also a step towards independence. When the child begins to sit up, that's a second step of independence. And so if we go on in this way, there are many indications to show that there are levels of independence. And independence is not just about saying that, I can go wherever I want, do whatever I want at any time in life. Independence is something much more internal and intrinsic to us, to say that I, as India, she said that she says, I would like my child not to see obstacles, but to say that she can do whatever she wishes whenever she wants. That's true independence, to be able to say that I can deal with this situation. I am good. I can find my happiness over here. I'm not dependent on another person to make me happy. I make the choice that I am responsible for myself. And so these are small independences. And for a very young child, when the child is, when one of the things that we say when we take a child coming to us at 2.5 is how much of independence can the child have, or what makes it possible for us to take a child is that we say that there should be independence, at least in toileting, at least in the fact that the child feels, I can tell somebody I need to use the toilet. I can tell somebody I'm thirsty. I can tell somebody that I'm hungry. Some way in which I can communicate this, because then the child feels in charge and not lost. And the minute a child feels lost and doesn't know what to do where, that's when insecurity, unhappiness, uh, lack of trust in the environment happens, and then the child closes up and the child doesn't open to learning. So for us, it's about helping the development of the will and development of independence. And from this, a lot of other things will come out. So whatever we do, whatever we teach to the child, as Srila was saying, it isn't only about knowledge transference. Whatever ideas we are having about, whatever knowledge we have, which we are passing on to the children, is also about how we have learned about our world around us. Because if in knowing about the world around us is how we learn to be independent in this world. So independent in thinking, independent in reasoning, for all of these, all the lessons we give are only opportunities that the child learns to do these things. So be it in the very young environment for the children below 6, or the elementary environment of the children below from 6 to 12 years old, or even later on for the children between 12 and 18 years old in the adolescent environment. It's about saying, how can they be independent for the stage that they are in? How can they be responsible for themselves, and how are we aiding that in that particular stage that they are in? So sometimes, and it has been, I'm sure we've had difficulties, and I'm only taking strength from this year has put a lot of issues to us Montessori teachers who've struggled, because we've looked at the development of children according to the ways we've been working with. And we've never come across such a situation where we are going to say that you can't come into contact with your teachers. You can't come into contact with your children. Because I was thinking back into when Dr. Montessori herself started, she discovered her method, having worked with children, was that she had been through 2 world wars, a couple of civil wars, and throughout that time, she came through so many hurdles, and she developed her method over a period of time. But when I was thinking back on it, despite the fact of the 2 world wars and the hardships caused by them, or the civil wars that she was, she was present in the countries where there was civil war, that she was never away from the children. The children were allowed to be there with her, and she observed them and she worked with them. Now, the situation that that we have faced as adults with working with children over here is that our schools have not been allowed to bring the children over here, and for that, that is one of the things that we found most difficult, is because we know that the learning that happens in this, it's very easy for us to take an adolescent and say, okay, now we'll do virtual classrooms, because the children have already learned to learn some things. But for the very young children, this is not true, because their development to a large extent is based on their concrete experiences, which for a 2.5-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or 5-year-old or 6-year-old is limited. Whereas a 12, 13, 14 or 15-year-old has 12, 13, 14 years of experience, which they have learned from. So they have those experiences that they can fall back on, and they can move then into an abstract. But for making that abstract connections we need concrete experiences. And virtual experiences are not concrete. And that's the difficulty that we knowing that we are looking at helping children in their development, that's one of the things that we have had to as we as Montessori teachers have had to overcome in this past year. And we've tried to do that in a way that satisfies everybody who's um, connected with it, helping the parents, helping the children, and learning while on the job. Because most of us have not um, have not been trained to use uh, this medium which we are using, and try to literally, many places are saying we are building the plane, learning to how to fly the plane and take passengers all at the same time without even having had the number of flying hours that we need in order to be the accomplished pilot. So that's what we really had to do as teachers of the very young children, because this is not something that we can this is not something that we can really how shall I say it? We were not prepared for that. We were more prepared for helping children who are there with us, because we can make the connect, and that's how it is. But despite that, I find that most teachers have been able to make the connect with children, have struggled but tried to get the help of the parents and communicated the difficulties, and yes, been able to collaborate with parents, because finally we have to be collaborative to help the child who's with us. So having said that, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we can, this is a topic that I've also, talked with other parents in the schools in Chennai, where we are saying there is the fear that if this extends, then what? Okay, how do I help my child? But one of the first things that we have to recognize is that regardless of whether your child can do arithmetic or write or read or do his history or geography or whatever other things, geometry, the first things that we have to help our child is in the sphere that we can help the child become independent. We can provide an environment where the child can become independent, because this is not something that is only left to a school or only left to the house. It's something that we can both achieve from our sides. And so how do we do that? How do we help? One of the first things that we forget, especially in this mode that we are all in, with the almost snowballing kind of use of gadgets in our world now, that we forget that language development starts very young, and we are not none of us really started to think how much we are expecting children to be very good with language, because only through language we learn a lot of things. But we've forgotten how to help them acquire that language. So one of the things that I constantly tell both adults in the teaching environment, or even the parents, is that there are many, many ways in which we can help a child acquire a language. And I'm saying any language. It doesn't have to be English, which is the medium of instruction in our schools. It has to be, in fact, the language that is spoken at home. It could be the language spoken at home could be the same language for both parents, or it could be different languages, one which is the mother tongue of one parent and the mother tongue of another parent. And knowing each of those languages is absolutely quite important that a child picks it up, because that's the language of their parents. And language, the very idea of language is a unifying factor. It's a factor which brings together the group of people who can speak that same language, and therefore it brings about connection. So when you language is also um, a medium whereby we pass on a lot of our cultural and a lot of who we are as a group to the next generation. So one of the things that we have to see is how our children learn language. Language is not learned only by learning the alphabet of that language or learning how to write or read it. Language actually comes from knowing it orally. And a very young child, the human child, learns to pick it up from the time they are born. One of the inside the womb too, it has been proved that one of the first organs that are developed are the organs of hearing. And so a child is aware of a lot of noises, a lot of sounds before even they are born. So one of the key indications that a child can hear very well is the fact that when the head is fixed, the child is able to turn their head to when the children hear sounds. But despite hearing a lot of sounds around them, when a child of about, say, 3 or 4 months is picked up and spoken to by an adult, the child will focus on the adult's mouth, almost as if saying that now I know that that's where the sound is coming from, and I have to learn how to produce that sound that by making the same movements that I'm seeing made by the person who's holding me. Whoever, it could be whoever, it could be the caregiver, it could be the mother, it could be the father, it could be anybody. But the fact is, as soon as the child is about 4 months old, and if you pick up a child, and very often when you pick up a child, you will speak to the child in your own tongue. I mean, that's what comes naturally to most people. And they will, and as soon as you do that, the children focus a baby will focus their eyes on the mouth. Okay. Now, the only aspect that we've forgotten over these many days is the fact that you need that contact if the child has to pick up language. And they need to know that how is this language used. So they need to hear people talking. Very often now, we don't have large groups of people in our houses, and therefore the children don't hear and see people talking to each other. Sometimes they may hear, I mean, now we have, the TV, we have a lot of other gadgets which can produce sound. But the fact is, it is not as interactive for a child as we think it is. And so when the children hear uh, actual people talking in front of them, their chances of picking up language is far, far greater than if, we played some music for them, which was in a disembodied gadget that's coming, from where the child doesn't know where the voice is coming from, how the voice is produced. The other thing we may say that, okay, we switch on the TV and the child sees it. But the fact is, the very idea that when we pick up a child and we speak to the child, no matter how fast I may speak or not speak in real life to adults, when I pick up a child, it's an unconscious thing, I immediately slow down my speech. Because you want the child, it's something that's very intuitive to all people. I don't think you may think that, are we being dumb? We're dumbing the child and saying they won't pick it up. But I think it's more an idea that, we want to be a little bit more clear to the child. We wish to be a little bit more clear to the child. So we slow down our speech. But what happens with the TV or something else is that because if we do not speak quickly, there are gaps that pass on in the air that most people who are anchors or speakers on the radio or television are encouraged not to leave blank spaces. So that's why they also use hmms and ahs and I know and you know and isn't it, or all of those unnecessary phrases and sounds in between that do not give the children the right way of listening uh, to sound, I mean, to language. And it comes across very garbled. So one of the things that we normally do, and another thing that happens now in many houses, is that we speak on the telephone. The mobile phone is something that we are all used to, and we speak. Now the child hears us speaking, but it's a monologue that they hear. They do not hear the other person who's responding. Okay, so the child doesn't know what language is about. It is about communication. When I speak, someone is listening to me. When someone speaks, I'm listening to them. So that aspect of it, they are not seeing when they are doing. So if it's possible to provide the child with these kind of, and I'm saying this not just for the very young child, I'm saying this even as we grow, because when we create more opportunities in our homes, whereby we discuss in front of children, with children, many things that they can at that point in time, depending on their age, um, understand, then it will help them pick up the language and know what our language is all about. And that will help in their development of language. Most of whatever work we do when we help, when the children come to us in a school, when we teach the child how to read, to write and to express themselves, we always say that in Montessori, we, as we are saying, we encourage um, independence. There is always something that we give which is called the control of error. Most of our materials, most of the work we do, we do not do the correction for the child, but we rather put the correction in the hands of the child through the material that we give, so that the child can judge for themselves, is this the way it is, or is this the way it shouldn't be? Or am I going down the right path if I want a particular result, or am I totally off my path if I'm looking for a particular result? And when it comes to language, we always say the control of error lies in the child's spoken language. So there is so much that is coming through when we talk about the spoken language, is that as long as the child is spoken with to and hears people using conversation, that's part of their, I mean, in fact, that's quite a bit of their steps towards independence, because the ability to communicate is very important. Now, how do we help our children with this, and what stage? Now, as I said, wherever it is possible, we should encourage them. We should talk with them. We should talk in front of them, and we should listen to them when they speak. And rather than going about correcting them, we should be aware of how we are communicating with them. One of the things that I have found is it's so natural. I mean, I don't know how it is with all of you, but I've put this to conversation. I mean, I've put this question to many parents here, and I found that they did come up with certain answers, which I felt was the same thing. But I'll put this to you. If how often do we just tell a child? I mean, I'm talking about this right from the child, right from the time the child is a baby. We very rarely tell a child that this is something. We usually ask, do you know what this is? And then it's almost as if we are feeling so good about, telling a child, you don't know this, I know it, I'm going to pass on this information to you. And we just say this, do you know what this is? And then say this is, something. And very often we are most of the time asking children to do something rather than just passing on information to them. If we look at our interactions with our children throughout the day, we are instructing them more often than not. And then when we think back to saying, can they communicate? How are they communicating? We are really aghast that they are unable to do some things that we've taken for granted that we are doing. And that's probably because over a period of time, and I'm only saying this because things have changed in our day-to-day life. We do not have so many people interacting with us as they used to be before. And even if you take the fact that, we are not, I mean, we used to go to the shop next door. We used to go to a market to buy our stuff. And now we go to a departmental store, we pick up things by ourselves. And at the most, at the counter, you would say a thank you or ask for the change or something like that. And that's all the conversation a child hears. And now with online purchasing, the child doesn't hear that also. So there's very little real experiences where the child can um, make sense of the world. As I said, concrete experiences with means that, there was this joke going around that when you ask people you ask children where you get milk from, they will tell you from the department stores. Because even though I may say, the cow gives milk or whatever it is, that's not what the child has experienced. The child has not even seen such a thing. So their only knowledge is that it comes, either it's delivered to us in packets, or it's something that they don't they don't know where it comes from, because they have no real idea. So in this manner, we have to be more aware of how exactly we need to help develop our children's language. I'd like just to take a minute to ask if all of you are with me, or is there any way that you like something different or like some enlightenment on some particular aspect that I have touched upon just so far? Or can I carry on?
Yeah, I think everybody's saying it's going good.
Okay. So that's fine. So one of the things that we can do is create more opportunities in our homes where we are interacting with our children so that a conversation happens. And I'd like you to be a little bit more aware over the next week before we meet the next time, is be aware of the things you say to your child and how many times you put questions to your children and how many times you're actually having a conversation with them. Because that will tell you, because when we do observations in our schools, it's not just about observing what the children are doing, but we also observe ourselves and how we are acting or reacting to what the children are doing. Because our one of the basics in the Montessori method is that teachers help the children by their individual observations of each child. And when we say observations, it's about how they are doing, what they are doing, based on that, we would then help them to the next step. So when we begin as inexperienced teachers after our training or whatever it is, we only observe children, but then later on, Dr. Montessori says it's not enough that you observe the children. You also have to observe how you observe and what you observe of yourself while you observe children. Because how you observe yourself will also indicate how you would help the child. So one of the things I ask parents most often is that just take a moment to see what is it when your child says something or does something, or is doing something or is not doing something. Take a moment to observe where this child could have seen such a thing happen. Was I instrumental in creating a situation whereby this child saw this or heard this or didn't have the opportunity to do this. When I'm saying this, I'm saying like, if you find that a child says something in a particular way, then you look back to yourself to say, did I say it like that? One of the other things that I said is that if you could observe yourselves to see how many times you question a child, and rather than giving the child the opportunity to learn from your conversations or to learn language from, or giving the information just as it, or giving the language just as it is. Like for the very young child, we would, when we are telling a child something, as I was saying, I found that, many people, many parents says, not just parents, I'm saying any adult, I have also been culpable of that, is that till I started observing myself. And I said, as I said, you ask the child what or why before you can give the child the information. So rather than questioning the child, just give the information. Rather than questioning the child, have a conversation with the child. These are things that will help the child become a better communicator, because then they know what, that also is a step towards independence. The other thing is that if we help this child, for the very young child and even the 6, 7, 8 year olds, language is about context. So teaching children, just the idea of teaching children randomly names of things and the numbers 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, or the names of colors or nursery rhymes or something like that, is not the most ideal thing, because those words that the children learn actually mean something. So when these words are given out of context, they are just so many words that a child picks up, which is the reason why we encourage that if you are there present with the child and you engage with it, and you would probably have seen in your virtual classrooms that no words are given without a picture being shown, so that the child understands that this name belongs to this object that they are picturized, or no story is told without a picture being held, so that the children understand at least the context of the story. So whenever we are using something with the child, as far as possible, try to build the context into it so that the child understands the context. Language out of its context has no meaning. It doesn't form as a vehicle of communication. And so even if I wish to communicate, if I don't have the words which will fit or suit my experience, which I want to express to somebody, it would hold me back. So whenever it is possible, at the home front, and their teachers are doing it in the schools, in the sense that they know that they have to give language along with the context. Always the context is provided for when they're giving the language. We have to do the same at home. Without the context, the language is irrelevant. The other thing that we can, when we are helping the child's independence, is whenever we have shown a child how to do something, allow the child to have the opportunity and the time to perform the action. Depending on the age of the child and depending on the difficulty of the whatever the act is, whatever the action that is needing to be performed, a child may take less or more time. And whatever the time is needed for the child to perform that action, we have to provide for it. Why I say this is because sometimes it is much quicker for us and less messy for us to do some things as adults than allow a child to do it. Whether it is the child dressing themselves or taking their taking their bath by themselves, or doing the little things like putting on their own shoes, putting the buckles for their shoes, or lacing up their shoes, or buttoning their clothes. Whatever it is, each of these actions are actually actions of independence. Now, there's a story that is this happened really. It happened when in a Montessori school, I think in the early 1940s. And there was this American who was observing in a school, and she saw these 4-year-olds sitting down for, it was a cold day, and the children were sitting down for their snack or whatever it was, which was soup. And since it was a cold day and the children had just come in out of their from going their outside play, most of the children had their coats on or whatever it was, and they had to remove it before they sat down at the table for having their soup. Now, the person who was observing was an American, and she said the story of the cold soup. And she said that, most of the children had sat down for their soup, and they were all halfway through eating it. And there was this one child who was struggling to unbutton her coat. And the whole class just continued with whatever they were doing. The teachers didn't help the child, or that's what the adult felt. And this 4-year-old was struggling with the buttons of the coat, and the observer was feeling like, oh my God, the soup is getting cold. This child is going to have, be drinking cold soup. Why couldn't somebody help her? But finally, when the child got that last button out, there was almost a beatific smile on the child's face. And somehow it was not that the people were not aware of the struggle that the child was going on, that was going on with the child. It was just that they respected the child's independence. And when the child finally got that button out, all the other children who in different positions of, spooning their soup into their mouths, actually stopped in whichever position they were. Some halfway through their mouth, some inside the mouth, some in the still in the bowl. Whatever it was, they all smiled and appreciated the fact that that child was able to do what she was able to do. So when this act of independence, this allowing a child to do something, even if it takes long for them, and it would allow us to do it in seconds of that time, in a very fraction of that time, we have to allow a child to do what they can do, even if it will take time, even if it can be messy. Because sometimes we feed a child because a very young child would mess, it would be a mess. But sometimes we have to give the child the opportunity that when the child starts to sit up, if the child can make that coordination, even at 2 years, if the child can eat by themselves, allow them to eat by themselves. A child who's 6 should be able to help and do things around the house, because that also brings about their sense of belonging, their sense of being part of the house. So most of us tend to say that, a child should be happy so that they shouldn't do chores around the house. For us, for you and me, it's chores around the house. For the child, it's an opportunity to be part of that family. For the child, it's an opportunity to say, I can do something that will help my father or mother. Very often we do not, and it's happening more and more now, that we tend to look at our child as a very young child as more a source of entertainment than somebody who we need to be told that, you're part of us. So what we do is, with the very young children, we tend to finish all our work so that when the children are awake, then we can spend our time with them. How many of us do that? quite a few of us, isn't it? So, but that is saying like, okay, the only time that we are doing it, we want to play with them, which is again entertainment. It's not about, or we want to teach them, which is again like, a teaching situation. But it's not about that. It's about saying that every opportunity or at every task that is around the house that we do, the children can be involved in. And when we do that, we're actually passing on the message that you belong to this family. You belong, you contribute. And that goes a long, long way to helping the child's independence because they feel needed, they feel part of it, and they don't feel entitled. Because the sense of entitlement is a very wrong thing. Nobody should feel entitled to something because it doesn't make you a contributory person. So children, when we start doing things for children when they are capable of it, the message we are telling, there are many underlying messages we are sending to the children. One is that you are incapable of doing it, that that's not going to help them in their self-esteem. Two is that I'm here to serve you. Yes, we are here. We always say we are in service of the children in our schools, but that service is not to be servile. In the hospitality industry, many people serve us, but that doesn't mean they're any less than us because they serve us. So in the same way, when we serve the children, sure, we are humble. We have to be humble, otherwise we can't serve them. But we are not being servile. These are two different things. So neither should the child feel like, oh, everything is being done for me because I'm God. But we should also in some way help the child feel that I have to do things, and the child wants to. The child wishes to do and be part of the family. But from the beginning, when we don't provide the opportunities where the child can be included, then what we do is actually sending a message to the child. And then later on, we wonder why, when the child is about 6 or 7 or 8, and you call them and ask them to be part of doing something, and they say, I don't want to. And worse, when they become adolescents. Then it's difficult to reach them. But then we've already set them on that path. Without realizing it, we've set them on that path. So the younger you catch them, and it's not too late. I mean, it's never too late to help the children understand that they are part of the family, include them. It would have been easier if we start very young. With their age, it requires a little bit more effort, but it's not impossible. Because the feeling of wanting them to be part of your family is very, very intrinsic to all of us. I mean, we feel it. We love our children. We want the best for our children. And we are part of something together. And when we do that, we are bonding with the children whenever we include them in anything that we do around the house. And I'm talking about real tasks. Take them to the market if you're going to buy something for the family. Don't take them to the market only when you're going to buy something for them for their birthday. Because when you're buying for the family, you're buying for everybody. You're not buying only for them. And so they realize that when we buy something, when we buy the groceries, it's for everybody. When you want to share something with somebody, please start by sharing with an adult, because then the adult will know how to receive it. We don't have to teach a child how to receive something. We don't have to teach a child, say thank you or whatever, or even how to take something, not to grab it, just to take one with grace, something that is offered. When we show it to the adult will naturally, I mean, because the adult already has experience of it, has watched people being, receiving things. The child will notice how adults exchange things and how they receive things, how they offer things, and then the child learns. But our way of saying most often is, We give it to the child and say, "Le lo na beta," and then say, "Jab lete ho to say thank you kaho." And they don't even know why you have to say thank you, because they don't even see it as that's the exchange that we do. So these are ways in which we help the children become part of the family. And if we do it in the way that we are continuing to do it, we have to do it even when the child is 7, 8, 9, 10, because the child, it hasn't become part of them. But the younger we start, the more easy it is for us, because the children, what we've learned in our younger years, we say that we incarnate it, which means that it becomes a part of our body, it becomes a part of our personality. The word incarnation, and it means actually it's coming from the Latin word to become part of the body, to embody in some ways. So things that we learn as young children stays with us throughout our lives. So these are things that we have to actually start doing for the children before we even think about saying, shall we pass on our history, shall we pass on our geography, shall we pass on our math, or our ways of counting, or our geometry, or whatever else we would like to pass on. These are some of the things that we need to pass on to our children. Now, I know that, I have been spending a lot of time where it may be seeming like as if it's only for the very young children, but it is not true. Because one of the things that we in the Montessori method, when we are using it, is even in the young children, or even in the older children, our lessons are never about only the lessons. I may use a particular lesson, but the manner in which I give that lesson is about saying there are higher aims for it. The children may learn the lesson, but in the way they learn it, there are many more aims. One of the first things that I would say, we have in our Montessori classroom is that we never have more than one of a particular kind of activity in the classroom. Why is that? Most of the things, whatever we have, we only have one of its kind in the classroom. We'll only have one in the primary classroom. We'll only have one pinta, one set of pouring of one kind, or one set of fastening frames, or whatever it is. In the elementary, when we come, there is only one set of material for doing arithmetic, addition, subtraction, whatever. There's only one frame where you can do long multiplication, another set of frame which you can do another set of material where you can do long division, but there is only one of each kind. The reason why we do that is the child has to make a choice. Okay? And when you make a choice, I mean, it's not a choice only when I have to choose the career that I want to make, or the person I'd like to be with for the rest of my life. These are not the only choices that come for, or who am I going to elect in the next election. These are not the only choices that are left to us. There are choices we are making every second of every day. But how do I make these choices? Are they intuitive? Or they thought through? What does it teach me to follow through with my choice? So when it comes to the very young child, we say that nature urges the child to make choices. Okay, that is just like in the womb, how the different organs are formed at different points in time. In the Montessori method, Dr. Montessori felt that after the child has born, there's a lot. I mean, the human baby is the only baby which takes a long time to become even physically independent. Physically independent, as I'm saying, being able to walk by themselves. Most other creatures, within a few hours of being born, the calf will stand on its own. Okay, within a few minutes of within a few minutes of it being born, if a giraffe doesn't stand up, either of its parents will kick the giraffe, will kick the baby giraffe, Why? Because they know that the giraffe, for all its beauty, has very spindly legs. And if the legs do not support the child within a few hours of it being born, that you can be sure that giraffe will die. It will not survive. So it has to land on its feet and it has to learn to uh, get up and walk. Otherwise, it will not find its strength. So these are all the different ways in nature where people are, in the creatures are learning to survive and help the next generation. We as human beings have the longest time where even to become physically independent, to become to to walk, it takes between 12 months to 15 months, and even then the children are not steady. We know at 2.5 when the child comes to us, and we know when we see a child running, we are nervous because we know the different stages when we see the child about independence, how they become independent when it comes to climbing stairs, when it comes to walking, when it comes to running. We see these different stages in the child's movement. And but the thing is, our movements are so interlinked with our mental movement, our growth intellectually, because most of our, in fact, all of our functions are guided by our mind. I mean, the very act that I can bring together two fingers to pick up something is actually a mental movement. The hand by itself, I cut off this hand, it will not pick up a pencil. It's because the nerves are attached to the mind. When the mind thinks of, oh, I have to pick up this pencil, the fingers naturally come together and picks up the pencil. So all of these connections, all of these things, these connections have to be made between our movements and our brain, which requires all of this to happen. And all of this happened over millennia in our development of over the human evolution. And we are seeing it in the span of a few months in the child's life, in a human's life. And even that we sometimes think is too long. Some of us are worried before the child is 2 and say, oh, the child is not speaking. Why is the child not speaking? Or we're saying, at 3.5, the child is not saying numbers. Why is the child not saying numbers? So these are things that, because in some ways, one of the things for us adults is that we don't have any memories of ourselves before we are 6. The reason being that our brain is differently wired before we are 6 and after we are 6. Before we are 6, we have what Dr. Montessori called the absorbent mind. And after we are 6, we come into what we know is the human mind, which is a reasoning mind. Okay. And only our reasoning mind has concrete memories, which we can definitely remember. It's not that we don't have memories before, but those are all very, what shall I say, sensorial memories. Some things will trigger, but we don't exactly know where that will trigger. And some things we think we remember of a very young age, but that they're really not. It's more like what we've heard people say about ourselves. And because we have some vague cellular memories of it, we think it's our memories, but it's not really our memories. Our The other memory is the memory of our reasoning mind, and that's when we don't remember when we learned a lot of things. And that's why even when the children are very young, we start teaching them things because that's what we know and what we remember. So I would like, actually, if you've got children younger than 6 at home, is that, I mean, for those parents of you whose children are younger than 6, take the time to observe what they're doing and then help them with that, rather than actually teaching them things about reading, writing, or arithmetic, or geometry, or geography, or anything like that. Because that information, without the context, is absolutely useless. That language, without the context, is absolutely useless for the children, because it doesn't help them communicate. And all we do after they're 6 is help the process of the reasoning mind. And for the reasoning mind to work, they have to go through steps. You don't arrive at reasoning overnight. You have to wait for it to happen. One of the things that we noticed very I mean, Dr. Montessori noticed it, and we also notice it with children, is that below 6, they are, although they may use other questions, the questions coming from children usually is, what is this? Because they only want to know about what is around them. It's only after about 6 years that they will really want to know why, where, when, uh, what is happening, how is this happening, because then they're interested in the cause and effect. Before that, it's just about fact. So it's only after 6 years, and I would say closer to 7 years, that the children actually want to know about reasons. Because that's when we truly believe that the reasoning mind has had time for preparation and it comes into being. So I think we are kind of got only 10 minutes. So I'd like to wrap up today's session with leaving you with this idea of the development of the human brain. And if you have any questions or any suggestions as to how you'd like a little bit more information on any particular idea, I will try to incorporate it within my whatever I have planned for the next session. And if you have any questions on whatever we've done so far, that also is something that I can.
Yeah, so we open the house for the questions. We
Yes,
have
please.
8 minutes here.
Yeah.
So any questions, anyone?
Ma'am, this is Deekshita. You
Yes.
said when we're talking to kids, we mostly start with a question. So if
Yeah.
if I wanna impart, not I wouldn't say impart. Okay, if I wanna tell my kid something, suppose
Yeah.
I wanna tell my kid about election, right? So
Okay. Yeah.
I have to first ask, what do you think is an election,
No, you
or
don't
what
have
do you
to ask. You don't have to ask. See now, you find the context. So you have to wait for most often. You have to wait for the children to come up with a question.
uh-huh.
Okay, so if you want to create that area, then if you're listening to the thing and you kind of say, we are going to have elections. I mean, elections are going to be held in these states in India over the next few months. And this is why the elections are held, because India is a democratic country. We choose our leaders. So election is a time when we choose our leaders. In any of this, have I ever asked a question to you? I don't want to know. I know, I mean, I then if the children will come, one of the things you have to be aware is that whatever the child knows, no child, and I'm saying this out of experience, no child ever wants to hold back on what they know. You give them a secret, they won't be able to keep a secret, because they don't know what it is to hide their knowledge of something. You and I may not, unless asked specifically, I will not share something that after a while we get a little bit inhibited, where we will not go out of our way to share it. But I have not come across a child who, uh, when they meet you for the first time, if they have, if they create, if you've created a feeling of trust, will come and say, uh, I have something to share with you. This is what I did today. So children don't really want to hold back on any information that they have. So rather than saying, do you know what elections are all about? You're going to actually would rather say that we are going to have elections. Now, election is a time where we choose a leader for our country or our state or whatever it is. So you're imparting that knowledge to her. So I don't personally see a need for questioning.
Okay, okay. So, okay, my question here is, what do you? I didn't really quite understand what in which way it impacts the child if we ask a question and then get to know what their understanding is, and then on top of that give an understanding that they will be able to correlate with. So I
No,
didn't really
see, it
understand.
all depends again. It depends on the situation and the age of the child. Okay. So, very often we have got into this that we ask more questions. So, we have not given a child the opportunity of knowing. As I said, there are many aspects to language. Uh, when we speak, when we write, there is formal language, there's informal language, there's a way of addressing a large public, there's a way of addressing if it's someone older, if it's someone younger. There are so many nuances to language. Okay, and when we do it only and it's not a test. Now, we have gotten so much as a culture in the last, I would say, I mean, it may have started a little earlier, but I would say it has gained ground more in the last 25 years, is that we're all into testing. I mean, even if you take in our schools, Montessori schools, we don't have exams. But it is a fact that in 180 days of schooling, there is only about there is less than half days of learning and teaching, and more than half days of testing what the children have learned. Now, is education about imparting, or is education about teaching? I mean, questioning or testing. So when it's not, we do not realize it, but it is about a testability of how much the child knows. But we don't need to know how much the child knows. We're sharing some information with the child, and whatever information the child has, this will only be one more layer of. If the child has some information about it, this will just be another layer added to it. Does that make sense? Because even when we know something, when we read it or read something again about it, a particular thing a second time or a third time, or we hear it for a second time or third time, isn't there a familiarity which helps us understand it better?
Yeah, it gives kind of a better perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that questioning is wrong. I'm just saying that where is the need for it? Especially when there's so much that a child is picking up about language, how does it help? That's my feeling about the whole thing.
Yeah, in this context, I would like to make one comment. Just, I was making myself clearer with that thought. So if I may share that, it is like, making an examination curriculum as a sharing or a teaching program. That whatever is going to come in the examination, whatever the child is going to face as, whether she knows or doesn't know, we kind of try to bring that in as a part of our sharing with the child. And that has been going on most of the time, instead of just sharing, because we know that these are the things the child is now ready to take.
True, ma'am. Makes sense. Yeah.
Ma'am, I have one question. Some
Yes.
amazing insights you gave. I mean, I mean, even though my child has been in a Montessori school for almost 3.5 years now, I didn't know that. I did notice that they keep only one item, but I didn't know that this was the reason behind it. I just thought that's the way it is. So the question I have is, I mean, given the current situation with people working from home and the tempers fray, like there are more arguments and things at home. What should be the approach with little children around? Like, it doesn't seem right to be completely hushing it and picking a time where they would be sleeping or something like that. While it doesn't, the other thing also seems to have its problems. So
we also have to realize there are many things that are playing over here. It's I agree with it completely with your thing about saying that all of us are cooped in. There's almost like a cabin fever kind of atmosphere that is there, and it's even if we may be the most positive of souls, there is this whole uncertainty in the air all around us that it's playing into uh, ourselves. And while I would say, yes, be honest with your children, and it is tough for us not to um, um, have uh, loud voices, whatever in it, arguments or whatever we may call it, heated discussions, uh, and it's not always possible not to have it in front of children. Um, After that situation, if it is at all possible, take your child either together or, you know, whoever feels they can deal with it. I mean, either the mother or the father could sit with your child and say that, I mean, explain, not in too wordy terms, but really share with your child that we had a difference of opinion. We we were we were talking in this way. It had nothing to do with you. Because sometimes what children get the feeling is that I'm also part of this. I'm also responsible for this in some way. And that is most hurtful for the child. So in some way to say that this, we will sort it out. This is not something that is going to impact you in a harmful way, is something that we can share with children. I mean, to say that it is, I mean, it's, yeah, in an ideal place, we should be able to not have it, the children should have the best of the world. But these are tough situations, and we are all going through times where it can get on everybody's nerves. I do understand that. Wherever it is possible, we ourselves can seek help so that we become calm. We take measures that help us, because when we are happy, our children will be happy. And somewhere take the responsibility for yourself to be happy. Do whatever it needs uh, for you to be happy. I would really would suggest that to all parents, is that take the time to be yourselves. Take a share, when you've got only one child and a small space, you're not allowed to go out. Take the time. I know that there is this Dr. MC Matthews. He was a pediatrician who's now not practicing anymore. Um, he's written a book about parenting, where he said that between him and his wife, they had made it possible to take time out for themselves. And it was an agreement between him and his wife that whoever needed that time, the other person was not, took the entire responsibility of the children, and saw that the parent who needed that time it was their time. They were not just, so somewhere along the line, I know that, working online, it has I mean, at times, even timings are not, how shall I say, respected. When you went out and you came back, you had a fixed timing. And now things just flow from one thing to another. But it's for us also to say, and with uncertainty and a lot of other, situations, but somewhere along the line, we also have to take that time, respect ourselves to take that time to give us that space to be happy. Because happy parents also mean happy children.
Okay, so that was really a very nice session. I hope you all agree. I just wish we could all come on screen for a second before we say thank you to Sunitha ma'am and to meet for the next session. The next session is on next weekend, which is is 27.
The 6th.
6th. So 6th of
6th.
February. 6th of February at the same
6th
time.
of March. 6th of
Sorry,
March.
I'm so sorry. 6th of March, we meet at the same time. Yeah, 3:30 p.m. And thank you everyone for your participation. And thank you, Sunitha ma'am. That was a really nice insights that you gave. That is the only word that is coming in my mind. And we look forward to more of it now. And we would like it to be more interactive. Yeah.
Yeah, we would. Next time we will. Now that we've set the stage, I think we can have more interaction. With,
more interactions. Yeah.
Right. Yes, we've done.
Thank you.
Okay.